Hey guys, how's it going? Delrith here, bringing you another rapid-fire style review, this time for the third-person shooter Left Alive. Left Alive was developed by Ilinx? I don't know, one of the two, and published by Square Enix. So, first off, anyone remember the original Front Mission series of games? A bunch of turn-based tactical mech combat battle games that were pretty great. You know, a series that we were all hoping secretly would get rebooted and be brought back to its original prime? Well, with the release of Left Alive, I'm fairly sure that this universe is going to be completely dead with very little hope of game releases in the future. To put it bluntly, everything Left Alive tries to accomplish ends up in total disaster. There's really not a single facet of this game that impressed me in any way, shape, or form, and by judging the response the internet is having to its release, I think it's safe to say it failed. Visually, the game looks amazing! Well, that's what I would be saying if it had launched for the PlayStation 3 back in 2006 and not 2019 on the PC. In all honesty, it looks massively dated, and the world reminds me of the ones we got on consoles a generation or two back. The only thing that looked even slightly decent in the entire experience were the main character models, hilariously standing out as higher quality than the rest of the world throughout my playthrough. I guess you could say the Wanzers, the giant armored mech units, looked alright as well, but that's where it ends. The world is incredibly bland, with very little diversity in the locals you go to, and almost no static object placement being utilized to enhance the quality of your surroundings. Buildings are copy-pasted all over the place, interiors included, and you'll be seeing a lot of them over and over again, and actual models of them seem incredibly low poly and wholly unimpressive to look at. Textures too are just bland and uninspired, leading to an even further diminished visual experience. It all just looks really dated. There's really no joy to be derived in any visual sense while playing through Left Alive, and honestly, again, I really thought that I was playing a PS3 game. Oh, just before I forget, and I have to mention this because it's part of the world, the entire game is a freaking walking advertisement for World of Tanks. It's one of the most hilariously awful cross promotions I have ever seen implemented. Turn around a corner, World of Tanks poster. Ooh, a shiny collectible, World of Tanks postcards. Got a neat backpack for inventory space, World of Tanks backpack. Every sign everywhere in the entire game, World of Tanks. Seriously, look at this shit. I wouldn't be surprised if this game was entirely and utterly funded by World of Tanks, as they seem to promote it more than their actual game world or story itself as I played through. The animations just kind of suck as well. They look half-assed, stiff, and at times hilariously bad. Things like turning transitions and extra animations for that completely disregarded in the design process of the game. The reloads, recoil, melee, there's really not a single animation of quality at all, again, reminding me of what low frame animations look like a couple of console generations ago. I guess if I had to pick a favorite one, it would be the dodge rolls, which you will be spamming a lot, just because it looks like every character is just haphazardly throwing themselves into the wind, and I got a good chuckle out of that. Speaking of ragdolls, when you kill enemies, they just sort of fall backwards in slow motion and lose all rigidity in their bodies, even at times hilariously launching into the air or even spasming out. As a side note, I have to throw this in here just because I gotta give it credit. I never crashed, lagged, or had any sort of save corruption, and from a technical standpoint, it functioned pretty well. So if the visuals and animations and world are bad, maybe the story isn't nearly as awful? Oh, no, it surely is. The core story in Left Alive is that you play as one of the three primary characters at any one point trying to survive and get out of the country known as Novoslava, which is currently being invaded by a massive army in a sort of blitzkrieg faction. The entire defending force was almost instantaneously wiped out or retreated, so every single inch of this place is packed full of enemy soldiers, Wanzers, which are giant mech tanks, and tanks themselves. The idea is that you'll be sneaking through a destroyed city of survivors and characters just trying to stay alive, with all of them having been left behind. Unfortunately though, the execution of this plot is really poor. You play as either Mikhail, a Wanzer pilot, Olga, a police detective, or Leonid, an accused assassin looking for revenge. All three of these characters are not what I would call interesting in the slightest, each following their own slightly branching storylines and converging towards the end of the plot. You don't really get a choice in which one you play either, you'll be bouncing between them every chapter, inventories and all. The writing of the main story seems to fall apart as well. Cutscenes are either badly translated or poorly written. There were multiple times where the characters just seemed incredibly stupid, even forgetting lines of dialogue they were just told seconds before. There was one point in the story where someone shows up and Olga is told who they are in great detail, only to stare blankly for a few seconds and then go, wait, who was that? To have the same dialogue repeated to them shortly after. Another example would be the scene where Leonid is holding a gun, but both him and his AI are constantly spouting that he needs to find a weapon while he is holding a weapon like an actual gun in his hand. I am not making this up. Having him ask where one is located and where he should go. I'm not just look.
05.
Piece of crap AI.
The Garmonia army is patrolling the perimeter. I advise you acquire a weapon.
He's already got one. He's literally got a weapon. Look at his hands. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a few small interesting twists to the main story that I didn't see coming, like viruses and clones and experimental mechs, but none of these are interesting enough to carry any weight. The bosses are all incredibly cliche, their dialogue sounds phoned in, and it's just all so mediocre. It's been done so much better before. I'll give the story credit for being around 10 hours long, but oh man, that might have been far too much for me. So what about gameplay? Well, it can be summarized as this: brutal, unforgiving, ridiculously slow, and unenjoyable. The intended way to play the game is for you to constantly be low on supplies, sneaking everywhere and avoiding enemies, dying when they notice you almost 100% of the time, and using a crap ton of craftable gadgets to distract them, kill the guards, and navigate through areas without getting caught. Every single one of these intended mechanics are executed awfully, leading me to play in a completely different manner, but we'll get to that in a moment. Crafting is a huge chore. You have weight limits that seem to make no sense and a large number of junk items that never really see use. Most of the time, I only ever found myself making remote bombs and Molotov cocktails, all the other gadgets ending up being a waste of space. Navigating through the crafting menus themselves is also a hassle. It was all just generally a huge pain in the ass. Combat straight sucked. Guns have no feedback, enemies fire like lasers and don't suffer from ammo restrictions or anything of the such, and it all just generally feels blah. I didn't even bother trying to use melee for any long period of time, as I found it to be pointless with the tacked-on durability of melee weapons. Remember how it felt trying to aim Snake's pistol in the original Metal Gear games and how clunky it would feel by today's standards? Yeah, that's pretty much it for the entire game. The sneaking system is also totally busted and ineffective. Enemies can sometimes see you through walls and will constantly shoot at you through walls, also tending to bug out and ignore distractions you create half the time you're playing. You also move incredibly slow throughout all of this, making some sections seemingly impossible if you're trying to do it the intended way. You'll feel like you're fighting these mechanics and they're fighting back during your entire playthrough, leading me to just end up saying fuck it entirely. In the end, I spent my entire time spamming the dodge roll, moving 2 times as fast as intended, and completing the game in that manner once I found out the AI is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in a game in my entire life. Not only will they forget you exist if you quickly move around a corner, I think they were only designed to deal with turtles, they can't seem to hit you or respond in any decent manner if you're rolling around. I simply found myself dodge rolling through entire battalions of enemies as Olga yelling, "Yeah!" And it was actually her dodge roll sound, like she's some type of anime cat girl. It's hilarious. Disregarding all forms of tactics and subterfuge. Let me pick all this up, it's important. Nyeh, nyeh. This strategy is the only reason I was able to make it through the entire thing without losing my sanity, and I'm thankful it prevented several more hours of mediocrity. As a side note, I think all the soldiers the enemy deployed have some sort of advanced short-term memory loss. If I ever did get caught doing this, all I had to do was simply take cover behind something for about 10 seconds and they'd stop trying to get me, chase me, or whatever, and then go back to what they were doing beforehand. I'm not kidding. Take a look. Like, wait a minute. The only redeeming thing in the gameplay of Left Alive was the Wanzer combat, and that wasn't good, just better than everything else, and unfortunately there was extremely low amounts of it. Controls for the Wanzer and the Wanzer mechs themselves are incredibly clunky, but it was a breath of fresh air from the mundane and awful on-foot mechanics you deal with. Stomping around and blowing up hordes of dumbass soldiers who stand there and eat bullets was therapeutic at times, just giving enough brief entertainment that I didn't pass out in my chair. Mech versus mech combat, however, was absolutely laughable, as the enemy mech AI suffered from the same problems that the standard soldiers did, sometimes even allowing me to shoot at them from a distance without responding, trying to move, or doing anything at all.
Rocket launcher.
I guess he was just that stupid.
Caution. Enemy reinforcements detected.
All in all, everything about Left Alive just feels like a complete disaster. The best way to summarize it is that it's a poorly executed Metal Gear clone with nothing done in any competent way. That, or it's the longest World of Tanks promotional interactive trailer I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know. Why Square Enix decided to buy it up and stamp their name on it, I'll never know, as I expect better from them and know they can do better themselves, and this is just a train wreck. To see Left Alive in their list of games standing by greats like Final Fantasy hurts my soul, and if you want to retain your sanity, I suggest you stay away from it. Because of all that, Left Alive gets a 3 out of 10. It's functioning, but barely playable in any other aspect of enjoyability, and I couldn't give it any higher than that. It's so bad it's laughable, and I genuinely wouldn't suggest it to anyone. In fact, I'm going to do everything I can to try to forget that I ever played it. Well, I guess at least there weren't any microtransactions. Anyway, that's going to be it for this rapid fire style review. If you liked it, do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more from this channel. And if you're already subscribed, ring the bell to get notifications on new videos like this in the future. Oh yeah, and if you like the rapid fire reviews or would like to see when I'm doing them live on Twitch, you can head over to my Twitter at AJSADelrith, all one thing, and give me a follow. I'd appreciate it. Until the next video or rapid fire review, this is Delrith, and I'll be seeing ya.